What's up, gamers? It's your host, Cobra, and today we're doing a review and breakdown of Champion Ascension's Prime Eternal sale. Champions Ascension is a strategy battle game being developed by Jam City exclusively for Web3. Web3 means that it is a play and earn game, and that it's going to live on the blockchain and be powered by NFTs. Exactly what we're looking for. Jam City is a mobile gaming development company, and this is the primary reason why I have been excited about the project, because they are already making games that, in my opinion, would fit nicely on the blockchain. This will be their first entry into blockchain gaming and Web3, so there's bound to be some mistakes along the way, and in fact, we're going to talk about a whole bunch of them today. So today we are going to take a look specifically at the Prime Eternal sale that wrapped up a couple of days ago on February 27th, and all of the mistakes leading up to the sale and during the sale, and then afterwards I'll tell you a little bit about my plans with the project moving forward. And before we get too far into it, I want to warn you that I have done my absolute best to capture as much as possible here. However, one of the problems was that they have made this project very difficult to follow along with and not miss any of the details. We'll talk a little bit more about why that is the case. So I'm confident everything that I'm sharing here today is true. However, I can't say with 100% certainty that I've caught every detail. Quick programming note, while I haven't done the editing for this video just yet, I can already tell this is going to be a long and wordy one. So I always put timestamps in the description below. Feel free to skip to the section that you're most interested in if you don't need 20 minutes of story time. Also, because most of you aren't going to make it to the very end, consider giving us a follow on Twitter and make sure that you've hit that subscribe button right now so that you don't forget later. Before we get to some of the questionable decisions and red flags, let's talk about what was supposed to happen. And we've actually been following this project for about 2 months. That's about how long I've been in their Discord and trying to learn more about what the project was and trying to get myself on the whitelist. Now 2 months in a Discord before you're even able to make a purchase or investment into the project is a really long time. However, because this was being developed by Jam City, I was willing to be patient and see what happens. During that 2 months, there were many opportunities to win a spot on the whitelist. However, they made it incredibly grindy to even try. Most of the times they had raffles. You had to have a certain level within the Discord in order to even be eligible to win the raffle, or they would do a Twitter contest where they were giving out 1 spot, maybe 5 spots, but there were hundreds if not thousands of entrants every single time. So you had to be really lucky and or really dedicated to get on this whitelist, and frankly, there's almost nothing out there save maybe a Marvel or Star Wars official project where I'd be willing to do that kind of time investment in order to just get a chance to buy. They also had a very large and incredibly long Gleam raffle. Now, if you're not familiar, Gleam is the raffle style where you click a link, it brings you to a web page. The web page has a whole bunch of options for you to earn entries into the raffle. Typically, it's things like follow their Twitter, join their Discord, invite some friends, and you can earn multiple raffle tickets. Champions Ascension's Gleam raffle lasted for about 2 months, and during that time, they also gave you a raffle ticket for checking in every single day, and since that only takes a couple seconds, that's what I did. I kept the Gleam link open on my computer. I checked in most days to earn a raffle. I used the invite when I could, but in the end, we had almost 100 raffle tickets, and we were lucky enough to win a spot on the whitelist. from that promotion. So that meant we were able to purchase during the pre-sale. The pre-sale or private sale took place on February 24th, and everybody had 24 hours to mint. And in fact, that was one of the more successful whitelist mints that I have seen recently. They were planning to sell 10,000 Prime Eternals total, and the whitelist had about 2,000 people on it. Plus, there was about 500 allocated for a private sale. So that meant there was about 2,500 or 25% of the total supply available during the private mint, and almost all of those sold before public opened up. The Prime Eternal sale was broken up into two major phases, the private sale and the public sale. The private sale was made up of about 2,500 users that were able to mint at 0.3 Ethereum. All of that is relatively normal, with the exception of 0.3 ETH being way too much for them to charge on their very first drop. However, they didn't really have much trouble selling through at that price. Then on the 25th, they started their public drop, which was done as a 48-hour Dutch auction. And the Dutch auction started out at 1 ETH, which is crazy. The Dutch auction would last for 48 hours, and every 48 minutes, it decreased its price by 0.01 Ethereum. And that meant that the last 48 minutes of the Dutch auction would be priced at 0.4 Ethereum, which is higher than the whitelist. In the end, they sold about 7,600 Prime Eternals total, which is well short of the 10,000 that they had originally planned to sell. Now, this is not necessarily bad news for those of us that purchased, because before the sale even started, they promised that any unsold Prime Eternals were going to be burned forever. And while I haven't seen that actually happen just yet, there's no reason to think that it's not going to happen eventually. Long term, having the most important utility NFT in the project be that much more scarce is probably a good thing for us holders. And to date, they haven't made any adjustments to the holder perks or benefits. So in theory, this is going to be a good thing in the long run. However, in my opinion, it is not a good thing in the short run or medium run, and is awfully disappointing for the team themselves. Not selling 2,400 or so Prime Eternals is a loss of approximately 1,000 ETH. Potentially even more had the Dutch auction been more successful. But 1,000 ETH at today's value is close to $3 million. And while this project is not hurting for funding, somebody's going to have to answer for that. And at my day job, when you lose $3 million for the company, that is not looked at favorably. So why did Champions Ascension lose almost $3 million during their sale? Whoever designed this Dutch auction doesn't know what they're doing. This was a head scratcher from the beginning. They set the price at 1 ETH very early on, way before they had any idea what the secondary action would look like. They designed a 48-hour Dutch auction that reduced its price incredibly slow, and they did not provide themselves an opportunity to adjust leading up to the sale. Now, all of those things that I mentioned that they chose not to do are absolutely standard in this space today. And because they didn't do those things, they lost a ton of momentum, which is really unfortunate because, as I mentioned before, the private sale was very, very successful, and there really was no reason to go into the Dutch auction without making some adjustments to ensure that it would be exciting and keep that momentum going. All they had to do was reduce the starting point so that it was a bit closer to the secondary floor at the time. That would have meant starting somewhere around 0.7, 0.65, maybe even 0.6 if you wanted to get a lot of action really early on. However, it also means giving up the potential for an additional 0.3 to 0.4 ETH profit on those early sales. And unfortunately, they still tried to capture that additional revenue, and it cost them. The other incredibly predictable problem that they ran into was having a Dutch auction that reduced its price way too slow. Now, this would have been the case even if the starting price made sense, but when you combine it with the fact that the starting price made no sense at all, it meant that the first 24, almost 30 hours of the Dutch auction included very little minting, which killed a ton of momentum and provided an opportunity for a lot of FUD to potentially scare away additional buyers. And of course, that's what happened. When you go from selling a whole bunch to all of a sudden being pretty much unable to make a sale, that looks really bad and starts creating doubt in the buyer's mind. Also, auctions 101 is that you want buyers at least paying attention to the auction as much as possible. Having the price reduced by 0.01, very little, every 48 minutes is incredibly slow, and nobody's going to sit around and watch that, especially when they know that they're a full day away from the price even getting to a point where it's kind of interesting. So by the time that the price had gotten to be kind of close to the floor for secondary, they started to see new issues. Now, credit where credit is due. They didn't go into this sale without a plan of some sort. Once the sale started, they kicked off a series of AMAs and promotions to help keep users and potential buyers engaged and thinking about the project. And what this looked like was a series of announcements of additional holder benefits. Like, for example, there is one where if you are holding a Prime Eternal on March 3rd in a couple of days from now, then you're going to get a pet airdropped to you. However, that particular promotion has waffled a whole bunch as the sale developed, and at this point I think they're still deciding on what the final promotion is going to look like, which is a shame. But they also had a ton of AMA voice chats in their Discord so that they could answer questions and talk about these new promotions, plus share some alpha for the community, and all of those things are great. However, they seemed to be mostly unplanned, at least from a timing standpoint, and they were happening at a whole bunch of different points during the day to accommodate a worldwide time zone, which is all fine. However, each one of these was different, and there was different questions asked, different answers given, and different amounts of information being put out into the community. And then the real problem is that they didn't record those so that we could watch them and listen to them later on, and they didn't provide any sort of notes or recap afterwards. If you were in their Discord 24/7, probably not a problem. You were able to catch all of those, but most of us aren't doing that, and most of us sleep. So every morning I woke up and there was news that I had missed overnight, and it was difficult to find out for sure just what was talked about and answered that I missed. And that brings me to the biggest problem. I'm going to try to be concise with this story, so apologies if I miss any details, but at this point in the Dutch auction, we're about 24 hours in. As I mentioned, there's almost no minting happening during that time period, and people are getting nervous. The Prime Eternals holder section of the Discord started suggesting that perhaps a early reveal would generate some excitement and get people more interested in minting at the current Dutch auction price. So as a result, the community lead had a very informal vote for maybe an hour or two, saw support for this idea, and apparently just made a decision to go with it. All of this was happening, and I had no idea, even though I had already purchased a Prime Eternal myself and was in the Discord relatively frequently. Instead, I see a tweet around 7 o'clock that day, Mountain Time, that says, big news, big announcement in 30 minutes. And then 30 minutes later, that big announcement was that they were doing the reveal and it was happening right now. Now, this is a problem for a whole bunch of reasons. Now, we didn't have our Prime Eternal listed at that point. I had no intention of selling. However, lots of people did. And what happens when your unrevealed NFT is listed and the reveal happens is that updates automatically, and now everybody can see what you got. So if your reveal was a good Prime Eternal and a rare NFT, then it got bought up instantly. And this was really, really unfair to the people who were listed, because it meant that they didn't have any opportunity at all to delist. Perhaps if they were involved in the vote, they had some idea of what might have been coming and might have been able to delist. But I know for a fact that a whole bunch of people were blindsided by this, and I'm certain that a handful are upset about the price that their Prime Eternal sold for after finding out that it was a good Prime Eternal. And to make matters worse, I still haven't even hit the biggest fuck up involved with the surprise reveal. Beyond what I just mentioned, and beyond the fact that a lot of Prime Eternal holders were not included in that decision-making process at all, they fucked up revealing because they revealed the metadata for all 10,000 Prime Eternal. So effectively, it means that for most users, you're getting a common if you mint. And at this point, it's still more expensive on the Dutch auction than the floor is. So as a result, a ton of people said, screw this project. They undercut the floor and dumped their Prime Eternals. Now, the good news is they responded quickly and did want to address the problem that they had created. The bad news is that they did so by trying to downplay and minimize the size of their mistake and tell us that all of the Prime Eternals are special, that this shouldn't slow anybody down from minting, and that the rarities that they were pumping just 24 hours earlier didn't make as big a difference as they were previously indicated they would. In fact, they put out official infographics saying things like rarer parts would be stronger in game. And they told us several times during the early AMAs that having divine parts and having high purity would mean that your Prime Eternal was very rare and better. Now they were telling us that those things make minor differences and that the primary benefits are from just having a Prime Eternal in general, and that getting a rare one was not that important. At this point, it's getting late, at least for US buyers like ourselves, and the development team is apparently not available to provide immediate answers and address these concerns. However, the community leads are taking this feedback to the team, and they're promising to get back to us with answers and potentially a resolution as soon as possible. The good news here is that's exactly what did happen. Sometime after I went to bed, they announced that they were able to re-randomize the remaining mints that were still available. This meant that the problem of not being able to have a reasonable chance to land a rare Prime Eternal during the Dutch auction had been solved. Unfortunately, at this point, the floor had dropped to below 0.04, which was below the minimum price on the Dutch auction. We went to bed and we were disappointed because up until that point, our intention was to get a second and maybe even a third Prime Eternal and make a little bit larger investment into the game. However, we didn't want to overpay and we were going to wait until the very end of the Dutch auction to do so. Instead, I went to bed. I woke up. I didn't check the Dutch auction at all and went on with my Sunday plans. This is another questionable decision that I didn't realize up front, but the final hours of the Dutch auction were essentially happening overnight or very early morning for US buyers. And while I understand not everything is going to cater to a US market. That's still your biggest group of buyers and potential spenders. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have what would normally be the most exciting and action-packed part of a Dutch auction happening at a time when the majority of your best buyers are not going to be available. The end result was that they minted out about 7,600 Prime Eternals, and they missed out on a lot of potential users and a lot of potential revenue. That brings us to today. A little bit less than half of the collection has been revealed during the early reveal. Everything minted afterwards is currently unrevealed and set to reveal later today, March 1st, at 6 p.m. Mountain Time or 8 p.m. Eastern Time. At that point, the collection will be fully revealed, and with so many still left to reveal, it is safe to assume that we're going to see the floor sink even further, because that is typical behavior with reveals as people want to get rid of their more disappointing and common results. Speaking of the floor price, it's currently sitting at 0.35, which is noticeably below the final price of the Dutch auction. It is still a little bit above the whitelist or private sale price, so things could be worse. It also means that the most loyal purchasers and users, the ones that got in the Discord early, worked through the very grindy process to get on the whitelist and spent their money first, are now sitting here having achieved essentially no value. And I know some of you might be thinking, hey, you spent that money a week ago. What kind of expectations are realistic? But in this space, that's what's supposed to happen. You want to deliver some early value to your first buyers by selling it to them at a price point that is going to rise, not sink. Of course, the project can't fully control that. However, that is where we're at today. So there is a lot of extra pressure on the Champions Ascension team to really deliver with some of their holder perks so that we can see the floor and the value of our NFTs recover at least a little bit. If you're like me and a bunch of my friends, you're probably on the fence right now as to whether or not you should continue to hold and or invest into this project, or if you should cut your losses and move on to the next one. And frankly, I don't blame you. So to help make that decision, let's review some of the holder benefits for owning a Prime Eternal. And I have linked several Medium articles below that go through all of the details. We are going to hit only the ones that I believe have actual value. The first one is the token airdrops that you're going to receive. Simply by holding your Prime Eternal, you are earning tokens that will be released later on and airdropped into your account. Now, we don't know what kind of value those tokens are going to have today. However, one of them is a token specifically for purchasing land plots, and I can promise you those land plots will be valuable and sought after. And so that benefit is likely going to pay out. In fact, we purchased a Prime Eternal specifically so we could get land, and holding a Prime Eternal still guarantees that you're able to get at least one piece of land. If you purchase additional tokens or earn even more by holding more Prime Eternals, you could definitely get more than one piece of land, but you're getting at least one, or the option to get at least one, which is likely going to have real value when that day comes. You're also going to be airdropped a pet for holding your Prime Eternal. And while we don't have a ton of information about the pets today, those tend to be sought after as well. We have seen with Guild of Guardians that the pets have quite a bit of value and are rather popular NFTs to resell. We don't know if that's going to be the case here or not, but in general, people love pets in real life and people love pets in the metaverse as well. Everything that I had just talked about was announced before the sale, so we knew about those going in. As I mentioned, though, there were several additional announcements and promotions announced during the sale, and those include a handful of things. If you are holding a Prime Eternal on March 3rd when they take the first snapshot. That is going to qualify you for an additional pet. I believe this is going to be exclusive for this snapshot, so it's the only way to get your hands on that particular pet. You're also going to get a special edition weapon for each champion that you're holding. If you happen to be one of the first 600 public minters, then you're also going to receive a new Essence regular champion later on this year. We don't exactly know what that means, but another champion's a good thing, and likely going to have some value in game as well. So, with all of that said, my plans and recommendations for this project might surprise you. I have no intention of dumping my Prime Eternal today. I do have it listed, but it's well above the floor, and if somebody is willing to pay that price, I intend to buy one that I like a little bit better for cheaper and take some profit out. Regardless, I expect that sometime tonight, the floor price for Prime Eternals is going to drop below the mint price of 0.3. And if I can get a second one for less than 0.3, I'm going to be relatively happy, because I think having two so that you can do breeding yourself is a nice benefit. I also always like to have one or two extras just in case the project really explodes and I have an opportunity to sell one for a lot. And despite all of the issues that have been experienced over the last week, nothing has changed in terms of the fundamentals for why I like this project to begin with. It is being developed by a mobile game studio, a real one, with real funding and a large team. In fact, they told us there's over 50 employees that are focused on Champions Ascension exclusively, in addition to having support teammates in other divisions that help work on the game in a part-time capacity as well. So there's no reason to assume this is going to turn into a rug and that the team is going to disappear. And there's a lot of opportunity and time for them to turn this ship around. And because the end goal is still a mobile-like game that I think will fit very nicely on the blockchain, there's still quite a bit of potential benefit down the line. I'd also like to get my hands on that land NFT, maybe 2 or 3 of them even, because again, that will provide some additional earning opportunities for us as well, and likely will be an in-demand NFT that you can flip if you're so inclined. And that wraps up our Prime Eternal sale breakdown and review. As a reminder, everything in this video has been game-related advice and not financial advice. You make these purchases at your own risk, and you make these decisions to sell or not to sell at your own risk. I hope that you found this video valuable. It was a lot of information to cover and way too wordy, but it was important to get this out into the community so that everybody has a clear picture of how the initial drop for Champions Ascension went. If you found this video valuable, consider giving us a follow on Twitter. That's where I like to interact with fans and other members of the community, and I'm talking exclusively about play to earn gaming. Also, double check for me that you've hit that like and subscribe button below. It really helps support the channel.